call to order this meeting of the City of Bloomington Plan Commission for May 16th, 2022. We have a number of items on our agenda tonight. We have some minutes to approve. We have some resolutions to look at and a couple of continued petitions, one major petition that will have a full hearing and a consent agenda tonight. We'll get into a little more detail on that in just a moment, but first let's start by calling the roll.
Ballard.
Here.
Seaborg.
Here.
Burrell.
Here.
Cockrum.
Here.
Herrera.
Here.
Kinsey.
No, Kinsey's not here.
Okay. Smith.
Here.
St. John.
Here.
Whistler.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, so we do have a quorum, and we will proceed. We do first have minutes to be approved. We have the minutes from the April 11th, 2022 meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, or questions about the minutes from the April meeting? If none, do we have a motion to approve?
I motion to approve the minutes of April 11th, 2022.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, those minutes are approved. We'll move on now to reports, resolutions, and communications. I know we have at least one resolution from staff. Jackie, would you like to
Yes.
tell us
sure.
more?
Some of you have already seen this. Mr. Rooker, I believe, is on as well if you have questions, but we are going to go over the fee schedule again and revote. So it has something to do with the statutory requirements, and we just are re-seeing this month. So we are proposing to update fees, and the memo that you received indicated that the last time we wholly updated fees was, I believe, in 2013. And the most recently it was updated before that was 1997. So we've updated it a couple of times in the last 25 years. And we are proposing to update based on some research that we did with other comparable cities and making our fees a little bit more in line with some of those. So we also did some cleanup just to some of the terminology on our fee schedule to make it a little bit easier to understand for petitioners based on the terminology in the UDO and in our administrative manual. So you can see here those items in red are proposed to be added. That text is proposed to be changed to the items in red. And additionally, the yellow items are proposed to be removed. So for example, the two here on the second page, outdoor seating in the right-of-way and a right-of-way excavation permit, are permits that are administered by the engineering department now after we split, and so those can come out of our fee schedule. We also added in a floodplain development permit fee, as that requires a separate review. That was something new with the 2019-2020 update. And clarifying here at the bottom that occupancy inspections are both for temporary and permanent occupancy. And then we, another small change in the variance fees. The base fee stays the same for the two different types of development standards, single family use and non-single family, but we have added a $50 fee for additional variance. So the way that it has been working for some time is that even if you needed 7 variances, you only pay the $100. So even though it's 7 times the amount of report writing for staff. So trying to keep these in line with the amount of work that they produce. Again, slightly increasing fee for site plans related to residential remodels. You can see from 200 to 250 plus 25 per new dwelling unit. And then we, for additions, again, the tack on the 25 is for new dwelling units only. And then, of course, in new construction, all your dwelling units would count toward your total. am now recalling that potentially Commissioner St. John found a typo in here last time, and I forgot to fix it before today. So I believe that I know what it is, but I'm going to check quickly. Yes, it is that preliminary and final plat fee located here. This number should be 800, not 1,000. So sorry, I forgot to catch that again before we put this back in. So that's basically it, trying to align our fees more closely with how much staff time is actually used on them, and similar to other communities we looked at. So I can answer any questions.
Are there any questions from commissioners for the staff regarding the fee schedule? Commissioner Cochran.
So Jackie, I'm not sure if you got my email, but, and I might have asked this question last time, but do we know what our total annual dollar amount that we bring in on fees are?
I'm so sorry, that's such a good question. I did see your email in this very harried Monday, but I forgot to get the answer, but I can get that and report back next time. So just so everyone knows, when we collect fees, they go into the general fund. We don't see any direct money to planning and transportation. But I can get that, and I will report that to you all at the June meeting.
Perfect, okay.
Any other questions from commissioners? I have one question, just regarding kind of how you arrived at some of these numbers. In some cases, it looks like we're just kind of going from, for example, 200 to 250, but then with the rezone to single family, we're going from 250 to 500 and sort of doubling that. Was there a rhyme or reason to the amounts
Sure.
of the increases here?
Yes. So we looked at, I'm sorry I don't have this pulled up this month. We looked at, I believe, 7 other municipalities, either similar in size or characteristics of Bloomington, so other college towns or other similarly sized communities in Indiana, and what their fees were. They're all wild, they're all kind of different, but tried to find kind of an average of the changes that we made. So for example, in the rezone, we were much lower than most communities we looked at. It's quite a bit of work. Obviously, it goes through this body and also council. And so just trying to reflect that hadn't been increased in some time more closely with how much work it actually generates for staff.
Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, is there any public comment on the proposed fee schedule update?
I don't have any. If you are in the Zoom and you would like to comment, you can send me a message, or Jacqueline Scanlon host, or you can raise your virtual hand with your reactions button. I don't have any in the Zoom.
All right. Then we are back to the council. Is this something that we need to take a specific action on? We just need to approve the proposed update?
Correct, yes,
There's
just
not
motion to
a
approve or
resolution
oppose.
number or anything
No.
to go along with this? We just need to, we just need a motion to approve the fee schedule as provided in the packet.
With the one amendment
With the-
changing from 1,000 to 800.
All right. Go ahead.
So after this vote, what happens to this? Is it done, or does it go to council?
It's done after this.
It's done?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move approval. Oh, sorry, you want to go ahead?
One more
I do have
question?
one more question.
Go ahead.
So once we make a vote, then as of tomorrow, they're in effect, correct?
Yes, Mr. Rooker can correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, I believe that's accurate.
Yeah, Michael Rooker, City Attorney. I would jump in just really immediately, Chris, so that means effectively tomorrow.
Okay.
Could you guys hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Yes, thank you.
All right, would someone like to make a motion regarding the fee schedule?
I don't love raising fees on people, but things cost money, and it costs money to do things the right way and to get things done. So I am grateful that the city has done a good job to figure out if we are charging, if the city is charging way too little, and to align that with also the actual cost of, or at least the perceived actual cost of conducting this activity. So thank you for doing that. So I will motion approval of the planning and transportation fee schedule as presented, with the change that the plat and plat amendment preliminary and final is $800 plus $1,000 per lot,
Plus $100 per lot.
plus $100 per lot, not
Thank you.
1,000. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
Second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any final comment before we call the roll?
I guess one comment, just as I'm looking at what we're, a minor amendment is also the text that goes along with it is preliminary and final, and I'm guessing we want to change that to primary and secondary to reflect the new language being used.
Yep,
Okay.
that'd be helpful, thank you.
Would you accept that as a
So
friendly
as
amendment to your
further-
motion?
A further correction amendment to my motion is that preliminary and final would be called primary and secondary. Thank you for that catch, Commissioner Seabour.
All right. Go ahead, Commissioner.
So one last comment. Obviously, I respect the fees, and I understand that we do need to raise fees. And these fees seem minimal in the overall development process, but anytime we raise costs, I just am fearful that the end user will end up paying these costs. So if there's ways to try to keep the costs down, I'm always going to probably lean in that direction. However, I do see, these are pretty minimal costs and do respect the time that the planning department puts in it, so.
Yeah, I'll second that, only maybe to add that, yeah, usually it is the end user that ends up paying these fees, but if we don't pay these through fees, they end up getting paid via taxes, and everybody ends up paying the cost instead of just the people who are using the service. So while it's never fun, I'd much rather see us, right-sizing our fees than having to raise taxes to cover costs of something that is a very specific use by a very specific set of users. So I'll reluctantly support it. Any other comments? All right. I think we're ready to call the roll.
Okay. Seabour,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes. Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
and Burrell.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Motion passes. We are on to petitions. So first, we have two petitions that have been continued to our June meeting. Those are PUD DP 2421, petitioner Robert V. Shaw, property at North Prow Road, 3500 block of North Hackberry Street. That's a request for final plan and preliminary plat amendment for the Ridgefield PUD and subdivision section 5. That will be heard in June. Second, SP 06-22, petitioner Strasser Construction Co., Inc., the property at 3030 70 South Walnut, That's a request for major site plan approval to construct a 9-building self-service storage facility with 10 new vehicle parking spaces. That has also been continued and will be heard in June. We have one item on our consent agenda this evening, and that is PUD 3-22, petitioners Trinitas Ventures, the property at 1550 North Arlington Park Drive. This is an amendment to the district ordinance and preliminary plan for an approved PUD. So that is on the consent agenda. For those who are not familiar, the consent agenda is where things end up if they are meeting the letter of the law or staff has otherwise deemed them to be non-controversial and not in need of a full hearing. And so we will typically vote on that consent agenda as a package without a full hearing. Is there anyone, any commissioner who would like to see that removed from the consent agenda and receive a full hearing?
If I may ask a question.
Yeah, please.
Thank you. Ms. Scanlon, can you characterize the, it says amendment to the district ordinance and preliminary plan for an approved PUD. Can you just characterize that so that I make sure I recall what that is?
Yeah, I think I'll let Mr. Grulich do that if you're there, Eric.
Yep. Commissioner Smith, as you recall, this went to the council 2-3 weeks ago for them to either approve or deny this request. And so this was a request from Trinitas for them to amend their PUD to allow for these 2 long, skinny lots on each respective road frontage to allow for signage, and then also to amend the district ordinance to allow for podcasting as a use within their PUD. During the course of being heard at the Planning Commission, the council, they didn't want to delay the project and overall platting of everything, and so they elected to just withdraw the petition. So the council voted to not adopt the petition at the May meeting, but because it left the Planning Commission with a positive recommendation for one of the aspects, and the council denied that, the Planning Commission has to ratify the action of the council.
So we're ratifying the action of the denial, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Gerlich.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Again, if you're with us online, you can signify your desire to make comment by clicking on the reactions button and clicking on raise hand, or you can send a chat message to Jackie Scanlon.
In the Zoom.
All right, so I guess we're back to the commission for a motion on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on approving the consent agenda. Would you please call the roll?
Okay, Whistler,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
and Seaboard.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the consent agenda is approved. We are now on to petitions. We have one petition for full hearing tonight. This is SP 05-22. The petitioner is MHG Apartments. The property is 1210, 1220, 1320, 1404, and 1414 West Arlington Road. It's a request for major site plan approval, and I believe Eric Grulich is going to present.
I think so. Sorry, give me just a second. I'm trying to
Sure, while Eric's getting ready, I'll read the rest of this description here. This is a approval to allow the construction of a multifamily residential building with 213 dwelling units in the residential multifamily zoning district. And Eric, whenever you're ready to tell us more,
I
take
got it,
away.
I'm good. Thank you for the time stalling there. So yes, as mentioned, this is a request from MHG Apartments for a property on the west side of town off of West Arlington Road. The petitioners are requesting a major site plan approval to allow for the development of 213 dwelling units on the site. And they also are requesting approval of the use of the sustainable development incentives as part of this petition. So the property is zoned residential multifamily, RM, and has been developed with some single family and multifamily residences. The petitioners are requesting to redevelop the entire property for one use. This would be a multifamily building with 213 dwelling units and 340 bedrooms. Surrounding properties have been developed with a mix of single and multifamily residences, as well as some commercial uses to the west and south down along Arlington Road. So as I mentioned, they are requesting to develop this with one building. This would be used as multifamily apartments. The site plan or the site as a whole would have two access points to the parking area, one on the north side of the site and then one on the south side of the site. The petitioners are proposing a total of 284 parking spaces. This would be a mix of 242 spaces on the surface itself, as well as 42 spaces within the building itself. There is a garage and access that is shown on the east side of the building that would lead to a lower level parking area that would have those interior spaces. The rest of the spaces would be on the surface lots. So with this development, they are required to install sidewalk and tree plot along the road. So with this, this road is designated as a neighborhood collector, and it would be required to have a 10-foot wide asphalt side path along the street. So this would join up with a multi-use path that was constructed by the city as part of the roundabout and improvements at 17th and Arlington, just to the east of this. So it would join up with that improvement that we made and extend almost 1,000 foot of multi-use path along this frontage. There would be a detention pond shown on the south side of the site that would provide detention for the entire property as a whole. This would be planted with a rain garden seed mixture to provide stormwater improvements, as well as the islands within the site. A majority of those would also have some of this rain garden seed mixture planted in there as well to provide stormwater quality improvements. Landscaping wise, they would be required to install landscaping throughout the site as a whole. There is a buffer yard that is required along the north property line since the adjacent use is single family. So that requires that to be planted with trees every 30 feet and then adds an additional 10 foot onto the base setback. So that is shown along the north property line. There would be electrical vehicle charging stations required. That is shown along the north side of the site on the parking area, as well as bicycle parking. That would be handled through interior bicycle parking within the parking garage. As I mentioned, the petitioners would be requesting to utilize the sustainable development incentives with this petition. The RM zoning district allows for a 3-story building not to exceed 40 feet. The sustainable development incentives, if approved, would allow for an additional story not to exceed 12 feet. So in order to meet the sustainable development incentives, the petitioner is proposing to have this be a silver certified building. This would be according to the Home Innovation and National Green Building Standard green rating system. So they are proposing to have that certified, and that would be required to be submitted to us prior to issuance of final occupancy. So through the utilization of that sustainable development incentive option, they are showing the additional floor here, which you can see. So this brings the total height of the building to the 52 feet that would be allowed utilizing that sustainable development incentive. The building as itself has a mix of masonry veneer panels, as well as soffit panels, and hardy plank siding, and fiber cement siding as well. This use of the different materials has been carried around through all four sides. They also have a change in building height to the use of the parapets, modulation. And then it also has two entrances. There is a large plaza entrance on the northwest side of the building that connects to the sidewalk that will serve as kind of the general overall entry to the building, as well as another entry on the west side of the building, which you can see here in the center of that. That would also connect to Arlington as well. So they have submitted elevations for all four sides of the building. They meet all of the architectural standards for the district. So with that, we are recommending that the Plan Commission adopt the proposed findings and approve the use of the sustainable development incentives with this project, and approve this petition with the 4 conditions that are listed in staff's report. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eric. Is there a representative of the petitioner who would like to add anything to the presentation tonight?
Who's that going to be, Eric?
That could be Katie Stein,
We'll start with Ms. Stein.
or Mike Johnson is the architect.
I think I'm unmuted.
Yep,
Can you guys hear me okay?
yep.
We got you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, this is Katie Stein with Smith Design Group. We are the civil engineers and land surveyors for this project. Thank you, Eric, for that presentation. At this time, I don't have anything to add. The petitioners are on this call tonight here in Patel with MHG Apartments, as well as the architecture team from Studio M. We have Mike Johnson and James Brown, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners, either for staff or for the petitioner? Commissioner Smith, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I have a concern that's been bugging me about apartment dwellings and complexes. And so I'd like to ask the petitioner about the appearance of the structure. I realize it does meet the requirements. It does appear to be somewhat of a monotonous-looking, larger structure. So, and I'm not an architect, so I will apologize for me characterizing it in that way. Is there any thoughts or ways to make that structure a little bit less monolithic and perhaps less monolithic, and there's no access through it, right? It's a large kind of triangle. Can you speak a little bit about the thoughts on the design process there? I worry that we have a lot of monolithic apartment complexes in town. I kind of worry about that, and so anyway, that's my question.
Yeah, this is Mike Johnson. Thank you there for your comments. What doesn't show here is variation in depth across the facade, and the balconies, some shadows probably would help here. And then, we have anywhere from 5 to a 6 foot offset in the facade. So the portions that kind of have the accented cornice are projected out, and then the rest of the building is set back about 5 foot. So the intent there is to hopefully make that feel like smaller buildings as you march down the hill there and across the facade, rather than a really, really large building. And you can see that in plan there a little bit. And then materiality, is something that we can explore right now. We're showing kind of one paint scheme, and for the masonry veneer, we're showing one color of brick. And we could look at varying some brick colors, masonry colors, and maybe an additional color there, so it doesn't just read kind of cohesive and as cohesive, or I don't really want to say the word either, but add a little bit more accent there. That's something we can definitely explore.
Well, thank you for those comments. And as far as the access to the structure, do I see that there's one access point, or are there other access points? I'm looking at the site and floor plan. So if someone wants to traverse the property, how does that happen? I cannot tell from the drawings, and it may be because I'm new to the Plan Commission, so pardon me.
Yeah, sorry, apologize for that. But yes, the northwest corner is the main entrance where the leasing office and amenities will be. The northeast corner has an entrance, pedestrian entrance for residents. The entrance that opens to Arlington is available also for residents to enter. And there is a vehicular access and pedestrian access adjacent to each other on the east facade. So elevators are within, I think we got 3 elevators spaced throughout the building, prime for move-in, but then also centrally located around the amenities and getting people to and from, amenities on the northeast corners, the dog park. So, and then we're also required to make accessible routes by the Fair Housing Act to all the site amenities. So the courtyard design is a series of ramps. We saw the architecture steps of, a full floor that kind of works with the existing topography, but we've also done that within the design of the courtyard. So the long curves you see are actually ramps that take you down a level and coordinate you and get you in next to an elevator. And so we've tried to make sure that we've made access into and through and connectivity throughout the site as feasible as possible.
Well, I appreciate the accessibility very much. Thank you very much. I think those are all the questions I have for now.
Thanks. Additional questions from commissioners? Go ahead, Tron.
So, kind of on this site, if you look at the northern east part of it, it runs up against this little easement that the city owns. Are you able to bring that up on the map, please? So yeah, the northern, either way, you see where it kind of kicks out. Right there is a city easement. Now, trails are in, high use during the summer and not so much in the winter. But right here is an area where we have a lot of connectivity through the city, down to the campus, out to the county, hopefully get you to the town of Ellettsville. When you go and look at where the city owns that easement in real world, you look at it, there's a lot of things that obstruct that for a possible trail. So I'm curious, did the city look at this at all and it might not just be in their long-term goals or plans, but this can connect you to Arlington and, I think thinking about the future and trail projects is necessary because we're encountering something similar where we want to make some connectivity and we would have to go through an existing trailer park. At some point, they may redevelop, they may not, but to have established connectivity is important. So 2 things I would point out is maybe if there's enough room to actually just kind of run up through their property to connect to where it kind of elbows out and there's a potential connectivity to Arlington, or make it where they stub and we're able to maybe connect to this property if that is ever developed. It's a long, narrow strip, but outside of that, I don't really see too many ways that the city is going to make it over to the north side, where Cascades and where they already have a bridge over the bypass. Everyone, I'm pretty sure, is aware of that bridge I'm talking about. So it's just a question I guess I'm asking staff and Eric has there been much consideration of how this property adjoins that little strip that the city owns that could potentially lead into a huge connectivity component to a trail network, Also, we get them all the way over there to that bridge that gets over the overpass. We're connecting a school and a grocery store. So just wanted to make that point. I've been looking at this connection forever, and like I said, at the immediate beginning of that easement, there's real-world issues that you just can't develop. But once you get back there, you never know what could happen.
So no, that's a great question. So actually our alternative transportation plan does actually show connections, a path that would lead up along Arlington Drive and then connect to Kinzer Pike and then connect to and go through the bypass. So give me just a second here and I will kind of share an excerpt from our transportation plan that will give you a little bit better idea of what the overall network would look along here. So obviously, as you know, we've got the multi-use path that is going along the north side of 17th, that wraps around Arlington, and then connects all the way up to 69. There's also connections that are shown to the east, as I mentioned, along Kinzer Pike that would stub into the bypass. So all of these are, shown on our transportation plan. So when opportunities like this for development or redevelopment come forward, they put in the required improvements that are shown on the transportation plan. Obviously, a lot of work and time has gone into making these connections and connecting different points around the city along all of our different road networks. So yes, this will hopefully work into a much larger network for the entire area.
Okay, I think that answers my question, but would you think there's any harm to ask the petitioner if they're willing to commit to a connection point there if there's one to be developed in the future? So we're not back here later on in the future saying, hey, we would love to connect to this site, but we didn't do that during the planning phase. I'm just saying it's here. It's on the table now to address, and if we move this forward, then we're coming back after the fact.
Yeah, this is your opportunity to ask the petitioner that as a member of the Plan Commission.
And so I guess staff's long-term goals, they're met without possibly that connection, is what I'm getting from Eric's answer.
Yeah, I think we're always open to more connections, but the connections that we, as reflected in the community document, are the ones that he has shown.
Right.
I think we're always open to more. As you specifically mentioned, I think that it's a mobile home park to the north of the right-of-way that we own here. So getting an easement through that property or at redevelopment time, that is something that maybe we could look at. But yeah, I don't think we specifically spoke, Eric's mentioned specifically spoke about that right-of-way in particular, but you can ask them for sure.
Right, and I just wanted to bring it out because, like I said, it's a way to maybe establish this potentially with no burden on the developer unless there's a connection established in the future. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Cochran, go ahead.
And so for Eric or Ms. Stein or the architect, on condition number 4, you talk about a transit stop and an agreement. Is there, I guess, conversations already been going on with the Bloomington Transit, and have they identified kind of where they think that transit spot might be on the property?
Yes, so actually where the transit stop will be located is just to the east of this, and I'm gonna try to draw this in real quick so that you can see where we're looking at. So this would be down along close to where the roundabout is, just to the west of the roundabout a little bit. So it's an area that is already in public right-of-way and is roughly where the crosswalk location is. That is just on the west side of the roundabout. So that is the area that the bus shelter would go, since the bus Bloomington transit route goes south and kind of east along Arlington as it exits out of the Trinitas site just to the west of here.
Great, thank you.
Other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Seabour, go ahead.
I think I will, I think this question, I'll start with the petitioner, but just on the plans, it looks like the property line goes essentially to the center line of existing road, but I also see lines essentially that I think are what intended to be the future easement areas, that they resemble what are typically right-of-way lines. And just trying to clarify where the right-of-way is, where it's proposed to be, and same thing with potentially easements, which is ultimately one of the conditions in the staff report.
Yeah, this is Katie Stein. I guess I can answer this question. There is, you are correct, Andrew. For right now, the property line is to the center line of Arlington Road. And everything setbacks on this property were based on what was on the proposed transportation plan. Eric can correct me if I'm misspeaking on any of this. And the plan is to have the multi-use path, tree plot, all of that within a pedestrian easement, or potentially dedication of right-of-way.
Okay, thank you. So basically it would be easement or right-of-way from the property line to the line that's back of the path, not just, is that, I think that's what I heard.
Yes, correct. That line is a foot offset from the back side of the multi-use path.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Commissioner St. John.
I just want to clarify Commissioner Enright's question about the easement relative to a trail. Is the easement the small vertical strip that runs north-south on the east side of the dog park? I guess this is a question for Eric.
Yeah, I believe that is what Commissioner Enright was referring to in terms of platting an easement through here. But he could certainly correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, it's already a sliver that's owned by the city, so.
Right, but it's that sliver there.
Yeah, right.
And this property does or does not, I guess you were asking about access to it. It looks like there's access from right before the roundabout, headed straight north, that whole strip. So I'm confused that we would
Well, in
need,
the real world, I think there's obstructions there to actually make it
on the south part of it?
yeah,
on the
further
back?
south. So if you actually were going to try to do something, it's going to have a lot of practical difficulties. But my hopes is that we just, if the petitioners are willing to allow a connection, if a future trail was to develop, you know, so we wouldn't have to come back and then ask if we could be allowed to
Okay.
connect.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
That's the point I was trying to
Yeah.
bring up.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions?
I'm going to ask a further clarifying question if I can.
Sure, go ahead.
So, Ms. Scanlon, if we want to ask for some of these, perhaps varying the colors of the facade and/or the connection issue that Commissioner Enright spoke about, how do we do that in this forum? Sorry, I'm still new to the Plan Commission.
And Mr. Rooker can correct me if I'm wrong, but if there are items that are not required by code that you want to simply ask the petitioner if they would be interested in doing and they agree to do them, in this meeting, then I think you could make a condition of approval to hold them to whatever agreement they make here, is how we would do that, I'm pretty sure. So the first thing would be to ask them if they would be willing to do those things, and then I believe we would add them as a condition of approval, not that you're requiring them to be done, but that they are offering to do them.
It's not uncommon for projects like this to have two hearings where in the first hearing there's a lot of feedback and it's continued to a second hearing, and sometimes we see those projects come back at a second hearing with changes incorporated. So that would be another option if you wish to move to continue this to another hearing until, to see if some of those things can be incorporated. It's frequently difficult for a petitioner to make an agreement on the spot about something they haven't had a chance to really consider the cost ramifications and so forth. I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but
Yeah, well, I
speaking,
appreciate
from my experience, that's how these things often happen.
Well, do you have advice, Commissioner or President Whistler, as far as should this, under this kind of line of questioning, should we go to a second hearing, or shall we just ask the petitioner if they want to do these two things? What is your advice?
Well, I think before we make any sort of motion, it would be prudent maybe for you to clarify exactly what it is that you're looking for, and let the commissioner or let the petitioner respond as to whether that's something they can agree to now or something that needs further consideration.
Okay, fair enough. Then I have a question for the petitioner whenever that's appropriate.
Go ahead.
Go ahead? Okay. Okay. So, Mr. Johnson, thank you very much for, talking to me about the facade. And so will you agree to vary the color? And I appreciate you pointing out the setbacks on the building. Would you agree to do that to make it more attractive, a larger building?
Yes, that's something that we would definitely look at. The product that we are looking at using as some standard colors that we could work with that would allow us to get kind of like a variety, kind of what I'm looking at is, we have the step in the building. We could almost treat it as two separate buildings. The southern half, northern half, kind of have two different schemes possibly, or kind of mix and match and add some variety. But yes, that's something that we could look at. There's definitely opportunity within our architecture to do that.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And so I guess then it be said that the petitioner has agreed to vary the coloration and facade to make it more attractive.
So if this is this something that you're satisfied with the response, or you want to incorporate this as a condition of approval?
I'm going to look to Ms. Scanlon to ask.
Because if we're looking to add a condition of approval, I want it to be very specific here. We can't really just have a condition that's going to say they'll make it more attractive. We need to be
Right,
make
that's
sure
that would be my only comment, would be, that's all very subjective. So that's why the code, talks about different modules or different types of design elements that can break up a building visually, horizontally, or vertically. So we would suggest to you that you probably would want something more specific to get at what you're wanting to do. But I mean, it's up to you. So in the vein of what Commissioner Whistler suggested, that may be something that can happen in conversations over the next month. Or, so, like Eric's showing here, they're using already, Eric, you can correct me if I'm wrong, 2 to 4 colors. And so we would need to know how you want this to be different, I think.
Yeah, I'm not really an architect, so I was just kind of looking to you all to try to interpret my desire to not have monolithic-looking buildings.
Yeah.
And looking to you for help.
Eric, go ahead.
I mean, I guess my comment here would be based on some of the what I've heard so far is, at this midpoint, at this break point where you do have two separate buildings, a slight variation in color tone, might be a recommendation to put as a condition of approval. We don't like regulating color. The UDO does not regulate color in any regards. So I'm very hesitant and nervous about getting into specific color tones.
I am as well.
Other than very subjective to say, a substantially different color tone and leave that to staff at our discretion as they come forward with a building permit to work with them. So, a condition of approval might say something to the effect of petitioner will continue to work with staff to have a different color scheme for the south half of the building at this break point. And we will work with them to kind of come up with something we feel like complements the rest of the building, but helps distinguish it at the same time.
Yeah, thank you. And that's the kind of guidance I was hoping you would say, since you are all the experts, and I'm a commissioner who just has opinions. So, Ms. Scanlon, can you fix that up for us as far as condition and have it reflect?
Yeah, I think what Mr. Grulich said makes sense. I mean, we could just go simpler and say, like what Eric said, basically that the south half of the western facade needs to have a different color palette reflective of the idea that it's supposed to look like a separate building. Eric, what do you think?
I will work up a condition as the comments keep coming in here, so I'll have something worked up here in just a minute that everybody can look at and react to.
Great.
Thank you very
Eric.
much.
All right. While we're waiting on that, are there any other questions from commissioners? I've got one. I'll try to ask this of someone other than Eric, so he has a chance to do that. Maybe the petitioner can speak to this. This is an area where flooding has been a challenge in the past, and it does appear from the site plan that there is a substantial loss of green space and increase in the amount of impervious surface that will be on the site. Is that something that we can quantify? How much new impervious surface is being introduced on this site?
I'm happy to answer that. This is Katie Stein with Smith Design Group again. I guess I don't know exactly how much impervious surface is being shown on this compared to what is there right now. But what I can tell you is that we've been working with CBU, and with their stormwater requirements, we have to provide detention calculations. So it is a way to quantify the runoff that is leaving the site. And we have to hold back not to how it is developed right now, but how it is, or how it would be, pre-development. So the amount of runoff that will be leaving this site will be far less than what is there now. And we do have a substantial detention pond. It can hold quite a bit of volume on that south side. So it will be improving this area with considering all of the impervious surface that is coming in here. But we in CBU will be very detailed in quantifying this and reviewing the calculations that go with that.
So just to clarify, you're saying the parking surface will create runoff, but it will be retained on site, and that runoff will not contribute to the overall runoff in the area.
That is correct. Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? We can, I think, go to public comment if there are no other questions.
I do have one
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Cochran.
Commissioner Smith, in all due respect on your opinion on colors, I just would love to confirm with the developer that they're okay with modifying the colors. I'm very cautious about dictating colors outside of the code. You know the many years we put into the UDO and the code and the materials being used, but just would like to hear from the developer and make sure that they're open to that idea. And I'm not sure who that was.
Sure, I think that's for you, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, this is Mike Johnson. I'm with the architect here in Patel, is the developer. It's something that we're willing to explore. I mean, to make it complement and accent a certain feature. But as far as like trying to set a standard, we can't, we don't want to be, I know you guys don't want to be too prescriptive and we don't want to be hamstrung, but it is something that we can explore to provide a little bit of variety or accent. But we have varied materials and met the code as well. So it's, something that we could talk about, and work on the condition for.
Well, Mr. Johnson, I do appreciate your willingness to work with it. I know, I mean, again, one person's color may be like a different color, and it would be a very difficult task to take. But if you're open to the idea, I appreciate that. But but I just want to be cautious.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on that, just to ask, was it the intent during your design process to make that feel like a separate building at that break point? Was that a design consideration?
Yeah, that was an initial thought. It was initially we were trying to hold it flat, and found with grade and building height restrictions, we could step it a whole floor and keep the floors aligned, and that created what we felt like was and with the recess and aligning the facade and the recess at that point created a much more scalable building as you went up the hill up Arlington. So that was, it was a little bit code driven, but it was also architectural. It kind of just worked out, and we ended up feeling like it was a better facade that way as well.
Great, thank
And
you.
I think, Mike, if I can add on to that real quick, we kind of, the purpose of it was not to get two different buildings, but to kind of play with the elevation, as you're going uphill, to kind of play with that rather, so.
Right. Not to make two different buildings, but make the scale feel less ominous along Arlington.
Correct.
Sorry.
We wanted the building to still flow across and have the same look and feel as if there are still two buildings rather than having kind of two separate looking, buildings. We want to make it look, we want it to flow, but still kind of flow with the elevation as well of the road.
Sorry, I just want to clarify for those not in the Zoom and also for doing minutes, that's Mr. Patel speaking. The second voice you hear there. Please, if you do speak from the Zoom, identify yourself before you talk. Thanks.
Thank you.
This is Bill Beggs with Bunger and Robertson. I'm on the Zoom as well. The problem that I would suggest, and this is what half of the petitioner, the problem as Commissioner Cochran brings up is this is so subjective, and one person's tomato is another tomato. And so to require something that is not required under the UDO is a very difficult thing for this petitioner or any other to be able to achieve. So while we do want to explore this and are happy to explore it, we'd actually ask that this not be made a condition of approval because it is just so vague and does not lend itself to precision and a standard we can meet.
Commissioner Seaboard?
Yeah, I guess maybe to follow up on Mr. Begg's question or comment to the developer is, I'm hearing a willingness to explore options and a desire maybe to make this building facade look and feel a little bit different, but recognizing it is all one building. Does the petitioner have concerns with us continuing this project, or maybe it's more a question too to our fellow commissioners, but just to really fully vet what you might propose that we can be looking at something maybe a little more concrete as a body?
I think I can speak on behalf of the petitioner that the petition meets the ordinance, and to continue is based on a color concern, we think would not be appropriate. So we would ask rather that while we are willing to consider that issue, we would ask that that you just consider what's in the ordinance only, and that we be approved this evening.
Yeah, could I make a quick comment to that? I think we could really get into the weeds with this. I think it is a slippery slope. I mean, we have a lot of proposals that could probably come this way that, again, visually we'd want to maybe comment on or want to see certain things, but if it's meeting the code, I don't feel like that's necessarily our role. In particular, I don't feel like that's my role to comment on the visual appeal of something if it's meeting the code and it's already checked all the boxes. I think we leave that to the standards that have already been met. Otherwise, I think we get into some real thick weeds that way.
Commissioner St. John?
Would you mind putting back up the picture where it's the color picture of the building? So, well, I don't have, so my packet, I think our packet does not have that color picture in it, I believe. What we have and have been looking at, and I did see it earlier, but I just want to state for the Plan Commission, we've been looking at this gray building, which in my opinion does look monolithic because it's all gray and black. But when you put that up and I see that it's actually the different colors there, I can't quite see that it's, I don't know that that's brick. I can't remember if that was in the materials. But I think there's also, I can see in the drawing, there's this simulated wood soffit panel, which on our drawings, when you zoom in, actually add a really nice, softer touch to what's going on, and it is on every single one of those raised areas. I just wanted to clarify that that is what I'm seeing, just because the pictures are so different. That it has that simulated wood soffit panel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we are anticipating including that on soffits and balconies and around some of the eaves there.
Okay, and are those eaves going over the front of the building or on the sides? Where you see the wood?
There is a slight projection from the front.
Of the simulated wood?
Yes.
Okay. So for me, when I see that and then I see the colors, I don't really have any objection to this. And I do agree that if it meets the UDO, I'm not inclined to want to ask the petitioner to go back and come up with something else.
Thank you.
Mr. Whistler, can I make a comment?
Yes,
Sorry,
please.
I'll be brief. This is a good conversation, though, to have. This does meet code. It's large. There are current proposals in front of council that would not allow a building of this size without some other stipulations. So while we, as staff, also don't want to suggest the regulation of code, there may be other things that the Plan Commission could think about the next time we're doing a code update, or if you want to ask us to bring one forward, having to do with how do you visually break up a building in other ways. So, it is a conversation I think to have, if not specifically about this site, just in general moving forward, if we're trying to move toward that.
I'm going to say that, that's been on a lot of people's lips lately, and I did bring it up, and I am also aware that if the majority of the commissioners don't want to do this, it gets voted down, right? But I did want to bring it up as part of the conversation because I have heard the comment about monolithic buildings, and so it wasn't exactly specific with MHG, but in general, we're having that conversation around, so thank you.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line, right? We do have anti-monotony standards in the code that we require developers to adhere to. We don't, we're getting some background noise
Sorry,
from
yeah.
someone.
I think Mr. Rooker was going to speak. Or was accidentally unmuted.
Yeah, I hope not. Yeah, I mean, certainly the line between personal preference on aesthetics and what is regulated in our anti-monotony standards is a fine line. I would suggest that if we have projects like this that meet code that do not satisfy the commission's desires or the council's desires for what is monotonous, then we probably need to update the code and make sure that we have a standard that is going to please those bodies. In the meantime, I think as far as procedure goes tonight, what we should do, what I would suggest is that we look at what Mr. Grulich has suggested. Someone can make a motion, and we can decide whether we like that motion to include the additional standard or not, and then we can proceed with vote. So what I would like to do is just get that kind of on the table here, see what has been recommended, and then we will go to public comment, and then we'll come back to the commission, and what I would like is for us to just have a motion on including this additional condition of approval or not, and then we can continue with a final vote. That works for everybody.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So a motion could not include.
If you get there first and make a motion without it, and there's a second, then we will take a vote on that motion first. So
I would like to make a motion if I could.
well, you can't yet. We have to
Okay.
go to public well, as long you can make a motion that's not on final action here, but we need to go to public comment before we can make a motion on final action here. All right, Eric, would you like to present or read us what you've suggested for this additional condition of approval?
Yes, so what I wrote here is condition number 5, which says the petitioner will work with staff to incorporate a separate color palette for the south half of the building to help visually distinguish the building modules. That's what I tried to incorporate based on some of the comments that I heard. It still leaves it very open for what the petitioner would like to incorporate in terms of what a separate color palette involves. But that is what I propose, and certainly I'm happy to modify that if need be.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith, does that, is that consistent with what you were looking for?
It is consistent, and it comes with the guidance of city staff, which I really appreciate because they're the experts. So,
all right, thank you. If there are no other questions, then from commissioners, we will go to public comment on SP 05-22. Doesn't look like we got one in the building. If there's anyone who's online who would like to make comment, click on that reactions tab and click on the raise hand or send a chat message to Jackie Scanlon. Please go ahead and state your name for the record.
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Thanks.
First, Dave Askins with the B-Square Bulletin, and just by way of background, I do understand that there's no legal requirement that questions asked from the public podium get answered, but I'm trying to popularize the idea of using the public podium to ask questions, not merely to express opinions, so that's what I'm going to do today. I want to talk about the dog park I figured that would get some conversation, but it didn't. So my question is, from a legal point of view, can the city enforce the existence of a dog park just because it's labeled as a dog park on the site plan? In other words, if the city notices that there's never any dogs in this alleged dog park, can the city say, hey, you got to put some dogs in here? Or is that basically a kind of a placeholder for open space to be used by however the petitioner wants? So for example, you could imagine a scenario where the residents of the building, there's not enough of them with dogs that it gets any use, and there's a bunch of residents who are into the local food movement and they want to create a community garden, and by a popular vote they decide they want to petition the building management to put in a community garden. Could they do that without coming back to the Plan Commission to say, hey, we've changed the dog park to a community garden? So that's sort of the legal question. And then from the petitioner's perspective, is this something that you notice about Bloomington that you thought it would be a good way to help fill the units because of something about Bloomington? Or have you tried this in other places and you found that this is an amenity that people want that helps people sign a lease with you as opposed to somebody else? So those are the two kind of questions, and I'll sit down now. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there additional public comment? Do we have anyone online, Jackie?
I believe I have one online. Mr. Goodhue?
Yes. My name is Bill Goodhue, and I live at 1135 North Hancock Drive. And this project, I realize, fits all the subscription to have the elevations of 4 stories. However, the location on Arlington there, the site is already elevated from the street. And when you push that 4-story building, it begins to look like a 5-story building for a lot of the appearance in our neighborhood. There's nothing else bordering or surrounding that is going to be of that height. So it is a concern for me and for my neighbors. We've actually met in private with the Patels, expressed our concerns, and in January, I believe late January, we had a Zoom meeting. It just is going to seem like a monolith that's going to stick up head and shoulders above anything else in the neighborhood. The arrangements of the site plan, too, we're speaking about the dog park. The dog park, I believe, could be still included, but maybe not in that northeast corner, that they could swap out some of the parking that is on the south end and take that dog park down to that area that would be then just north of the retention pond, and then put the parking back up where the dog park might be. That may actually help mitigate some of the runoff from this new surfacing that is going to create more rain troughing out down to that area. And the traffic is a situation of concern there as well. Arlington, right out of the roundabout going north, is posted as 40 miles an hour. You've got 2 driveways that we're going to be dumping on there, and you've got 213 beds that are going to be stated for the use of this apartment complex. So it's going to be a lot of cars coming and going. There is a direct lot line neighbor to the east, an apartment complex that dumps all of their traffic in and out into the roundabout. It would seem to me that that may be a way to make traffic a little bit safer, remove one of the driveways from Arlington, retain maybe the north one, and then put the other drive down into the roundabout. And the positioning of the bus stop is of some concern. You're going to have a lot of people trying to cross the street to get to a bus stop. I realize that the bus only runs from north to south at this time. If there was any consideration to having that bus travel somehow be recircuited to go south to north and place the bus stop on this proposed property and keeping all of the people from having to cross the street. There are many other design things that I can speak about. My meeting with Patels, I suggested the 3-story building and multiple buildings that would present more solar south faces that might be able to accept, in place of the current sidings proposed, to design solar thermal collectors that would dump heat into the buildings, not electricity. And because of these elevations on this site, that having multiple buildings could create an opportunity to have multiple levels of entrance from each of these buildings, the reduction in size height would then allow them to have the option of not including elevators, which is a large expense, and maintenance. There is a 26% credit available for anything that's done with solar on properties this year. Next year, it becomes 22%. It's declining return on their investment. It is also something would add value for tenants from here and all the way forward by keeping the space heating requirements down on those south side units. It would allow them maybe to even charge a little bit more for those units. So there are a number of concerns. The largest being the presence of this large building in our neighborhood. We have another large development that has just gone in, but they are very much removed from the street. And even though their building structures are of 4-story, they are not seen when you're walking around the neighborhood or driving through, because they're harbored down in a valley away from the street. So in its present configuration, I don't believe it suits our neighborhood. I do appreciate that the Patels have actually reduced the number of beds from, I believe it was 269 originally, to 213. And that will help mitigate traffic issues. But the configuration of the building remains the same as what they had originally. And it just is going to be huge. There's no way to get around it. I believe that's all I have to say at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? None here in chambers. Any more online? Okay, last call for public comment. Just as a reminder, if you're online, click that reactions button and raise hand or send a chat to Jackie. We'll give just a few more seconds. All right, seeing none, we are back to the commission for any final questions or comments or a motion. Commissioner Enright.
I've said this a couple of times about petitions in this particular area. It's really nice that this is only kind of dealing with a limited number of single dwelling homes. But as we continue to see developments occur in this particular area, if this moves forward with a favorable recommendation or approval, the character of that area is going to start to shift. And this is right there, I think we're at the cusp of it shifting to more of a dense, multi-story rental type of area on the northwest side of the city. So I've been saying this every time I've seen a development occur there, kind of to this size, so I'm just going to continue to say it. And I hope that we're thinking about that, because when the character of those areas change, then, you know, a lot of people's thoughts and intentions start to shift, and it starts becoming more, I think, desirable to build and then continuing to build these types of structures. So it's just a comment. Also, I think with my comment with the connection, I think if the city intends to build a trail there, that they're going to, and it'll only be a benefit to this site. So I don't think we need to ask the petitioner to, offer some type of connection there. But it's great to see all of those trails and that connectivity occur in this area. I pulled up an old PDF I created in 2017 that shows this connection I was talking about, but since then we've gotten that connection over 17th Street. They're connecting down towards the university, and right here is a crucial point. So I think that the city should think about that, because there's been two recent developments in the last 5 years that were adjacent to this easement. And I think the city should take consideration of, is this a potential way to enhance our multimodal transportation? Because the other one that we were alluding to earlier doesn't take you to that pedestrian overpass. It does get you past the bypass, but not to a bridge, which I think creates a safer transition across the bypass. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Commissioner Burrell.
Question in regards to the public comment of Mr. Goodhue in relation to the transportation. So as he proclaimed, so the bus goes north, so it's only goes one way, or only goes south? So the students will have to cross, or the residents will have to cross the road to get to the bus stop? Is that correct? Or is there a bus stop located on site?
No, so the bus, and this was a route that was worked out with the Trinitas development that is to the west of here. So the bus goes west on 17th Street, goes through the Trinitas development to the north, and then exits out on Arlington, and then goes south on Arlington, and then goes back east. So it goes south along Arlington. So the bus stop, the only location for that was on the west side of the road, the south side of Arlington. So we've worked with Bloomington Transit as well as engineering department to try to figure out the best location. Getting that as close to the roundabout and the existing crosswalks on there helps discourage any mid-blocks crossings, and forces the students and the pedestrians in that area to utilize the crosswalks that we installed to safely get across to where the bus stop will be. So that's why that location was very specifically chosen within the roundabout, immediately adjacent to the crosswalks. And then some of the comments regarding the dog park. That is just open space. We cannot require them to, actually set that aside as a dog park. They can certainly choose to use that as open space in whatever manner they would like.
Thank you. Any additional questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
First off, I would like to say, again, respectfully, Commissioner Smith, I do see your point, and I think if we wanted to put that into our purview, I think, as Jackie was saying, that we might want to put it in the UDO and talk about it. But I do feel this developer followed the guidelines in the UDO and our codes and with the staff recommendation. Also, I'd like to say, Eric, I think on a short period of time, you wrote an excellent condition that really captured our conversation. However, I struggled to actually add that to as a condition to the developer. So I will make a motion that we approve SP 0522 with the first 4 conditions only, not including the 5th one that was added.
Okay. Is there a second?
I will second that with the same comments. I do respect Commissioner Smith's questions. It's a good conversation to have, and it does reiterate that we do have the UDO in place, and this does comply with it, and so we move forward, but any changes we could do later. So thank you for that, but I do second that motion.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any final discussion, any comments before we call the roll? Commissioner Smith, go ahead.
Have one brief one, is that we have a lot of apartment complexes that are being built, and I think it's just, a great conversation to have to either make them less monolithic or make them look better. We can see some of the ones down on 17th Street that are monolithic and actually look atrocious. So I'm just trying to bring that kind of information forward and that conversation. And I appreciate all the commissioners because I respect all your opinions. You all have valid and good points. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Seaborn?
Yeah, just a couple comments. I just appreciate the conversation, like everybody's been noting. I'm certainly hearing more and more interest or concern about some of the size of the buildings, and certainly hope that the applicant, even though it's not a requirement, that they maybe look into and evaluate what they think is best after hearing some of this discussion. Also just appreciate the public comment, especially I made a note in my head about the bus stop locations, and just to make sure that through the city's review process that'll be continued to look at to make sure pedestrians are crossing to get to bus stops where is best. Shoot, and I feel like I had another comment, but I'm blanking on it, but thanks.
Thank you. Let me know if it comes back to you. Any other comments from commissioners? I've got just a couple. First of all, I appreciate the discussion tonight. I think this is an important conversation. Our standards on anti-monotony have evolved over the years. I can remember a time when the only thing we had in the code about anti-monotonous design was a requirement for solid versus windows, and so you could build a perfect square box as long as you put enough windows in it. That was considered to not be monotonous. We then added requirements for modulation, which required the building to move in and out, and we then added some requirements for building materials to vary, and now we have some requirements for undulation. The roof line has to vary. So this has evolved, and I suspect will continue to evolve. And frankly, that's part of our job, is to make sure that it does evolve to meet the needs of the community. So I'm glad we're having that conversation. But I do agree that I think the best way forward tonight is what's been proposed, because I'm not sure we have a specific outcome that we've been able to communicate to the petitioner tonight. I'll also say that when we look at what's in the packet, as Commissioner St. John pointed out earlier, at first glance, it comes through as very monotonous. It seems very monochromatic. It's not until you zoom into about 300%, that you can really see the difference in the materials and the change in color that's there. At 75%, which is what it sort of zooms to on my screen, it looks like it's all gray. So one suggestion I would make just to staff and petitioners is when we have buildings that are this large, if we could just take a zoom in on one section and put it on its own page so we can see a little bit more of that detail, that might be very helpful in the future, because it really, it looks like a totally different building when you zoom in on it far enough. And we're all using PDFs, and everybody's computers is going to zoom to a different point based on the, size of their screen and resolution and so forth. So just a little cross-section zoom in, I think, would be very helpful. And then finally, I'm excited to see what's happening along 17th Street. This is an area where we've now got a lot of activity. This is an area that was kind of dead for a long, long time, and now we've got a lot of new homes going in there. We got a brand-new school over there. It's exciting to see what could happen here. And to anybody, any developers out there listening, we need, if we don't get this connectivity over to the nearest grocery store, we need a grocery store on 17th Street. So somebody please come build that so that we can get, so that the people who are moving into these new homes, I mean, hundreds, thousands really of new residents on 17th Street are going to need groceries. And right now, they got to get in a car and go through several stoplights to get to it. So I would love to see some more retail and some more services to serve all the new residents in this area. That's all I got. Any other final comments before we call the roll? Nope. All right. Will you please call the roll?
Burrell.
Yes.
Cockrum.
Yes.
Whistler.
Yes.
St. John.
Yes.
Smith.
No.
Ballard.
Yes.
Seaboard.
Yes.
And Herrera.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the motion passes 7-1. All right. Thank you. That is the final agenda item for tonight. So we will see you all next month. We are adjourned.